where migrants and refugees continue to flow in. You can hear constant fire of live ammunition being fired into the air by the Greek border police. Earlier there was a big scuffle which led to further escalations between the refugees and the border police, where the Greek border guards decided to use tear gas as well as shot grenades. This was a total disregard of human life, as within the refugee population we could see a lot of women and children, and just the fact that they're there, they should have been at least moved to the front and in some type of cooperation with the police on both sides of the end. A lot of the refugees and migrants have crossed the border of Turkey into no man's land, and a lot of them are stuck right now between the Turkish and the Greek border. And in the background, if you can hear it, there's still rubber bullets being used and live ammunition, as I said earlier. So the situation here is deteriorating as time passes by. The flow of migrants and refugees has been constant since we have arrived here. The first day, it didn't seem to be that bad. There was about 200 to 400 refugees when we first arrived, and here we are 2 days later, looking at 3,000 to 4,000 refugees right here at Pazarkule crossing. Keep in mind that back in 2016, with that humanitarian crisis and that refugee crisis, we still have refugees and migrants stuck in countries such as Bosnia, Serbia, and Melinda touched briefly on the processing of refugees' cases. That is taking forever, and the situation, unless that gets resolved, is going to further escalate. So with this new wave of migrants and refugees approaching the EU border, it definitely calls for a more unified attempt of trying to find a solution. And Turkey has been very clear, enough is what Fahrettin Altun, the spokesman of the presidency, has said. We are hosting 4 million Syrian refugees, just Syrian refugees. So as we've been here, we've seen a lot more Iranian refugees, a lot more Egyptian refugees, Afghanistan, Pakistan, migrants of that population. And what was very surprising is the amount of children and women.
And Semir, how have they been received once they've arrived at that border? As we were reporting yesterday, tear gas has been used today in the firing of rubber bullets. People are determined to cross, but those border guards are also determined to stop them.
I'll give you a quick history lesson. The city of Edirne, which is on the border, on the Turkish border, very close to both the Bulgarian border and the Greek border. This city is mostly inhabited by Turkish, ethnic Turks who themselves have been prosecuted in the 80s in Bulgaria and Greece, and they were expelled back into Turkey. So the people here are providing food, shelter as much as they can, and the locals are helping refugees move along or even move back. There's the highway in the background, if you can see it. There are buses lined up for refugees who want to go back to Turkey or want to be moved back to Istanbul, but none of the refugees are taking on this offer by Turkish security forces. Actually, to my left right now, there's a whole convoy of children with families walking, and I'm just going to ask my cameraman to quickly just go here. You'll see a lot of the families with children and a lot of young kids moving forward. So the flow of refugees is definitely not stopping from where we are at, and the situation seems to be getting more complicated, not just here where I'm at, but across the whole border between Turkey and Greece as well as Bulgaria.
Now, Semir, just before you did move your camera, we were looking at live pictures of what seems to be a growing confrontation. I'm hoping we can get those pictures back up of riot police standing off with a number of people who seem to be throwing rocks at them. Yes, we're looking at the live pictures now. As we can see there, fires have been set. There seems to be a line of riot police at what is seeming the border while fires are set and people look to be trying to sneak across. It looks to be getting quite quite violent, Semir. I don't know whereabouts you are in relation to what we're looking at currently, but there does seem to be an escalating standoff developing as people look to cross the border, but also, while they're doing that, try and fight their way past these riot police.
Well, the cameras and the equipment is not allowed to pass beyond this point where we are standing, but we had the chance to go forward and even speak to some of the migrants and refugees getting back. The situation is definitely escalating. Earlier today, there was maybe 10-15 ambulances going back and forth, carrying those hurt, whether it be by rubber bullets, tear gas, shot grenades, water cannons. All of this is being used by the Greek border police. So refugees right now are not seeing any of their human rights being fulfilled, not by a EU state. So the situation is definitely getting more complicated. As you can see probably in these pictures which you're running right now, is refugees and migrants themselves are running out of patience, and I believe the security forces on both sides are. But the situation as it is, as we're showing these pictures, I believe that governments all across the board in the world need to be held accountable, and whether it's the job up to the NGOs or to analysts or whoever it is, to come together to the table and find a solution for these people. As I mentioned earlier, migrants and a huge, vast population of refugees are stuck in Serbia, for example, in Bosnia, and we have seen pushbacks by the Croatian police, who in a terrible manners handled the situation just a couple of months ago. And now we are here again, where Turkey has made it clear that official border crossings are closed. But refugees will not be prevented from seeking alternative routes. We have spoken to a couple of people earlier, and this will tell you how desperate these refugees are. They're making makeshift boats to try and cross the river between the Turkish and Greek border, and a lot of them almost ended up drowning last night. They're using these boats to cross the river at night, and now you can hear it in the background. It is definitely escalating. There's live fire being used, shot into the air, as well as rubber bullets. Turkey right now is telling the international community, we have had the patience and we have taken care of as many people as we can, but enough is enough. So right now Turkey is expecting support both by its NATO allies as well as its European partners.
Absolutely, Semir, and as we are talking, we are watching live pictures that are coming from that border of what seem to be the beginnings of pitched battles between people trapped in, as you described, that no man's land, and the border guards who are not letting them into the European Union. Now, Semir, as you mentioned earlier, there seems to be thousands of people there gathered in what looks like the woods. And what kind of conditions did they find themselves in as they spent the night there?
Conditions are terrible at night here. It is freezing cold even as I'm speaking to you. The winds are very harsh. The temperature outside is about 15 degrees, but it feels like it is 0 degrees. Refugees and migrants were trying to heat themselves up by using whatever they can find to burn, and they're spending the nights under the open sky, trying to use the night as a possible way in where surveillance is difficult. Now, we've also seen drones being used by the Greek border police, as well as hunting dogs, which you can hear in the background as you approach the border. So the situation is definitely not in any way being resolved. It's quite a difficult situation to see. I mentioned in one of our earlier live hits that there was a whole family where the husband was in a wheelchair, and he basically had to leave his family behind to children, which were approximately the age of 2 and 3. So the wife and the kids went on as he remained beyond Turkish borders, as he couldn't go on with his wheelchair. So that gives you an extent of how desperate conditions as well as the refugees are. The food which is being provided to them here is being provided by locals who at some point in their life were refugees themselves. So the solidarity is definitely here. But other than that, nothing seems to be organized for these people. There were some NGOs present who were checking up on people who were sick and trying to provide blankets as well as food to the most vulnerable, and those are the women and the children.